Well, good morning again. Let's say it again. I am the light of the world. Feel the truth of that. I am the light of the world. Wow. That was really great. Thank you. Thank you. Well, once again, I'm happy to be here. I had a little surprise as you were doing your love blooms and celebrating those that passed, because 1 year ago today, my mother passed. And so I was very touching to do that this morning. So I know that wasn't planned, but thank you for that. So my talk today is entitled No Room in the Inn, and I will apologize for the slides and the size because I was not aware of how it was going to broadcast. So I will be reading the slides for those who can't read it. And I want to thank Peggy for, we're high tech with this and we're high touch as she will be advancing the slides for you. Yes. So it's Christmas, and the next slide is, and isn't this great? I love the internet. Who knew when I was going to get this that I'd find a sign that says Bethlehem Inn, no vacancy, right? Okay, next slide. And so we have this scripture that comes from the Christian scriptures, Luke 2, 6-7. While they were there, they would be Mary and Joseph, right? The time came for her, Mary, to deliver her child. As she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. Because there was no place for them in the inn. And so what does it mean when we say there's no place for them in the inn? Because in Unity, we like to metaphysically interpret Scripture. We like to look at the meaning that's beyond the literal words and the literal story. And in that way, we have the joy of the literal story, which we're here celebrating somebody's birthday, right? We're celebrating the birthday of the man Jesus, and also we're celebrating the bringing of the light into the world in the form of the Christ consciousness. So if I can have the next slide. So for me, this story is a metaphysical story about what we call the three phases of mind. The three phases of mind. And we seem to have a conscious mind. Hopefully you're here today with your conscious mind. If you're not, you might be sleeping, and that's fine. If you're not off, these words will go into your subconscious mind, because that's the next phase of mind we have, the subconscious mind. And we say we have a superconscious mind. So what are those phases of mind? What are they? How do we know we have them? How do we use them? Well, when I was here last Easter, I used the slide similar to this next one, but it was Easter. So this is consciousness, that annoying time between naps. How many of you feel that way, right? Consciousness sometimes seems like an annoying time between naps, right? And then if we look at the next slide, we see an iceberg, okay? And what is it that we know about an iceberg? Well, an iceberg, about 10% of it is above the water and can be seen, and 90% of it is below the water and can't be seen, right? And an iceberg that can be seen, we can avoid. But the underneath part, like the Titanic, it couldn't be avoided, was it? So that which is under the surface could not be seen, and then we had a hard time being avoided, right? And so if we look at the three phases of mind in this way, we see that which is above the water of the iceberg is the conscious mind. That which is below the water is the subconscious mind, because we don't know what's in our subconscious mind. That's why we call it that, right? We're unconscious of what's in the subconscious mind. And then we could talk as if the ocean is then the superconscious mind. That this iceberg, the part above and below, is floating in the ocean. Our conscious mind or subconscious mind are floating in the mind we call superconscious mind. Make sense? And the really interesting thing about that, what is the ice of the iceberg made of? Water. What is the ocean made of? Water. It's the same stuff. Get it? And at that place where the water and ice touch, there's no difference. There's just a dance of molecules going on. Next slide. So then how do we know there are three phases of mind? Next slide. So we have Snoopy here, the shepherd, thinking about that. How do we know we have three phases of mind? Have you ever thought about that? Did you ever think about having three phases of mind? I didn't until I came into New Thought and Unity. Well, conscious mind is obvious, right? I just said earlier, we're here, we're interacting, I see people nodding and agreeing. We were singing, we're moving, we know by our conscious mind that we're here. But how do we know we have a subconscious mind? Have you ever thought about that? Or did you just take it on faith that the scientists said you have a subconscious mind? Well, we know we have a subconscious mind not by direct evidence, but by indirect evidence. For example, if we could look out the window and we saw a tree moving, what would that be indirect evidence of? Of the wind, right? We can't see the wind, we can't smell the wind, we can't touch the wind, but by our sight, by seeing that tree moving, we know there's wind, right? Well, similarly, we can know that we have a subconscious mind by indirect evidence. So what might indirect evidence be? Well, indirect evidence is this. Someone says good morning and you go, what do you mean by that? Where you overreact, over-respond to something somebody's saying to you. And if you're overreacting, there's something probably being catalyzed or stimulated in your subconscious mind. Have you ever had that happen? Have you ever met somebody that you instantly disliked? How about better, instantly liked? Yeah. And I think that is because of something that is in our subconscious mind that it's linking to this new person we're meeting. And we don't have the direct evidence of it, we don't have direct knowledge of it, but we have that indirect evidence of it by what we're experiencing, much like the wind. Are you with me? Yes. Okay, so we got conscious mind. We now can say we've got a pretty good idea of how we know we have a subconscious mind. Well, how do we know there's a superconscious mind? Well, I wouldn't be standing here today speaking to you if I didn't believe there was one, and I had to look for evidence. And because much of what's in the superconscious mind we're not aware of, again, we've got to look for indirect evidence, don't we? So for me, I learned to meditate when I was living here in Cincinnati back in the last century, back in 1973. And that's when I first became aware of indirect evidence. And for me, when I meditate, when I rest in the silence, meditation and resting in the silence is Unity's primary practice. It's that resting in the silence that feeds our prayer process, that informs our prayer process. Well, when I come out of meditation, there is an instantaneous knowing that I am somehow bigger than this person, Paul. There's a sense of oneness. There's a sense of unity. It's fleeting, but it's there. And so for me, that's my indirect evidence that there is this superconscious mind. Have any of you had that experience where you have a knowing? Sometimes there's an instantaneous mystical experience where a lot of people, it's like walking in the woods and all of a sudden it's all one. How many have had that? Yeah, that's indirect evidence that there's something more than our conscious mind, more than our subconscious mind. So in relation to our story, I want to share with you what happened with me that clearly came from my subconscious mind. Next slide. Bethlehem Inn. So when I was a kid, even when I was a young adult, when I read there was no room in the inn, that's what I pictured. Or maybe something more like a Holiday Inn. How many of you did that? Okay? This next slide, please. This is probably what an inn looked like at the time of Jesus. This is actually a slide of an inn from Herculaneum. Herculaneum was another city that was destroyed by the 70 AD volcanic eruption of Vesuvius. And so architecture was pretty much the same throughout that part of the world. So this is probably what the inn looked like. But I had no knowledge of that. But in my subconscious mind, I had pictures of Holiday Inn. Are you with me? Okay. Have you ever ordered a dish you like, and it arrives and you're disappointed? Yeah, that's because in your subconscious mind, you had made up what that dish is, and when it comes, it's going, that ain't it. That ain't it. Okay, and similarly with the stable, this is what I pictured, right? Did you picture this? And in fact, if you go into all of our stores, all the creches are wood stables, right? So back in the late 90s, I had the privilege to go on a Holy Land tour, and I saw what a stable actually looked like then. It looked like this. That their stables were in limestone caves. That's why the Greek says they were in a cave. And in fact, this stable in a cave was probably safer than the inn. Are you with me? Much more protection. So again, though, because of how I was raised up and all of that, my subconscious mind was saying it looked more like a Holiday Inn, or it looked more like a stable. Are you with me?
Yes.
And let me tell you, that's happening all the time. We have these images in our subconscious mind that are informing what we're doing and we're not even aware of it. So next slide, let's go back to our story, because this is related to our story. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. Well, when we're metaphysically interpreting the Bible, locations like countries and cities and inns are states of consciousness. Now, if that inn is a state of consciousness and it's full of what? Men and women, right? So again, metaphysically, men represent thoughts, women usually represent feelings. It's just a metaphysical definition. So in that state of consciousness, that is the inn, there were thoughts and feelings. And there's an innkeeper, which would be, have you ever noticed you have a thought that rules you from time to time? So that would be the innkeeper. That's a ruling thought in consciousness. Joseph represents wisdom or thinking nature. Mary represents love or feeling nature. And she's pregnant, right? She's pregnant. So this wisdom and love have come together to bring forth an idea. And as it tries to come forth into the conscious mind, the inn, there's no room for it. There's no room for it. And the ruling thought says, get in the back. Okay? So what do you think that is? What do you think the stable represents? That's the subconscious mind. That idea, Mary and Joseph and the pregnant, the baby, the yet to be born baby, are pushed back into the subconscious mind. And that subconscious mind is rich soil where our ideas and thoughts grow, where we're totally unaware of it happening. Are you following me, Keith? Yeah. It helps that it's a little interactive for you. Because I'm more of a teacher than a preacher. So we have here a situation where this metaphysically represents an idea that's trying to come forth, supported by Mary and Joseph, supported by love and wisdom, and there's no room in the conscious mind, but there's plenty of room in this state. Right, and so in the subconscious mind, right? And in the subconscious mind, in that stable, what do we have? We have all these other characters, right? We have animals, we have angels, right? And those are doing what? In the literal story, don't they support the baby Jesus? Well, so when that seed idea is in the subconscious mind, there are thoughts and feelings that we're not even aware of that's supporting and nurturing that idea. That's happening in our minds all the time. So let's see what Charles Fillmore had to say about that. Next slide. So Charles says in a book called Mysteries of Genesis, the true seed idea of this ideal man, Christ, is implanted within each of you and will eventually become manifest. Within each of us, in our subconscious mind, is this seed idea that in Christian terms we call Christ. It is a divine idea. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it Buddha. I don't care. It's the concept of this high ideal that is preloaded within us. Are you with me? It's there. And then Charles also said, the seed or word of God is sown in the minds of men. These seed ideas go through many changes, and they bring forth a harvest according to the capacity of the receiving soil. So the soil of your consciousness, your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, determines how well that idea comes forth. And let me tell you, the idea is going to come forth. And in this case, the seed idea is this Christ principle. If it was a thistle seed, it would always bring forth thistles. Are you with me? Boy, that's hard to think. I should change it to like, I don't know, Tazini seeds or something. But the thistle seed, which is a weed, even if it's planted in a rich, highly conscious mind, or mind in high states of consciousness, still will bring forth the thistle. Just as the Christ idea in a mind that's in a low state of consciousness will still bring forth something of that idea. And that's what this Christmas story is all about. Next slide. Now, when I was living in Cincinnati, I worked for a store called Swallens. Anybody remember Swallens? Yeah? And so we sold these. Remember, you guys, they still sell these here, don't they? And in there was this amaryllis bulb, right? Essentially a gigantic seed. And you'd buy it, and you'd take it home, it came in the soil, and you'd plant it, and it would grow, right? Next slide. This is the really interesting thing. Here is just a box of amaryllis bulbs, and you see how the shoots are simply coming forth? They're coming forth without water, without soil. That idea of the amaryllis that's encased or manifested in that bulb must come forth. And it'll come forth easier if it's watered, if it's in soil, but it'll still come forth. The same is true of this Christ idea that's the truth of you. It must come forth. It must come forth. Next slide. So Charles Fillmore says in Talks in Truth, every state of consciousness is first planted as a seed idea by some individual. In this case, the seed idea of Christ is implanted in us, in our subconscious mind, by divine mind. And then he said, divine mind blessed the union of wisdom and love. Remember who that was? Mary and Joseph, right? And pronounced on them the increase of spirit. When wisdom and love, Joseph and Mary, are unified in the individual consciousness, man is master of ideas and brings forth under the original creative law. Next slide. So here's the idea. You have within you, we are celebrating at this time of year, this Christ idea that's coming forth into the world. That idea is fully within you. If you do nothing, it will still want to come forth. In some of us, it comes forth and we're kicking and screaming. Have you ever had that? Yeah, I remember someone said to me, Paul, you're going to become a minister, and I said, when pigs fly. So pigs have flown, in case you're wondering. But so there's a method here that's available to us. Charles Fillmore said, and Jesus said, that we are to keep his word. Well, what does that mean? It means that we use words of affirmation, words of truth is the way in which we nurture these seed ideas that are already with us and in us. It's also, we use the power of the word, we use affirmations, and we plant seeds in our subconscious mind. Now, they could be negative affirmations. I call them defamations. You know, where you're talking badly about yourself. Well, you're planting that thistle seed in your subconscious mind, and what must be happening there? It will grow. So in this next slide, in the words of Jesus, this is what Charles Fillmore said. It is no idle experiment, this keeping in mind the words of Jesus. It is a very momentous undertaking which may mark the most important period in the life of an individual. There must be a sincerity and earnestness and right motive, and withal a determination to understand its spiritual import. This requires attention, time, and patience in the application of the mind to solving the deeper meanings of the sayings that we are urged to keep. So as a way to bring this lesson to an end, I want you to think about what seeds you are planting, but let us take these affirmations, these words of Jesus together. We'll say it together and then we'll pause and say it to ourselves. Together? I am the bread of life. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. I am the gate. I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the true vine. I am the true vine. I am. Just put your hand over your heart. I am. I am. And now the two most powerful ones that some would say is sacrilegious. That I will remind you that Jesus said that what he did, we would do. And what? And more. And the way we do it is begin by these affirmations. So look at the next slide. Together? I and the Father are one. Now I want you to use your hands. When you see me, you see the Father. So when you see me, you see divinity. Not as a person, but as the true essence, the seed idea that's there. And so as you go about this Christmas week, that is both the celebration of a man's birth, Jesus, and the celebration of this Christ idea coming into the world, coming into consciousness, I would like you to think about this. Next slide. What thought seeds are you planting, and what thought seeds are you nurturing? Because I assure you, whatever seeds you're planting, whatever seed you're nurturing, you are going to reap.